Good evening, everybody.
Couple Tav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Okay. Okay. All right, so I think we're on Chet over here. So it says here, let's see the tour inside. How says Sukkah? Let's see it inside. Yeah, so it says here, how says Sukkah ba'atzeret, right? So you're making a Sukkah, an atzeret, right? So let's say, so if you make it for shade, it's forbidden. Litom mimena etzim, but take wood from it. The Yom Tov, right? So no, I didn't say it right. So what it means is like this: so if you're making sukkah on atzeret, right? We'll see what atzeret means, right? I know what it means, but it has a couple of meanings, so we'll pinpoint it. So if you make sukkah on atzeret, right? Let's say if you're making it for shade, asur litom mimena etzim. You're not allowed to take wood from there, right? B'yom tov, on Yom Tov, afilu hayta reu'ah min hafla. Even if it was like, right, dilapidated and it fell. Rabbi Shimon matir beru'ah. So Rabbi Shimon allows it if it's dilapidated. And it fell. Deim li'achar shetikna b'defanotea וסככה שמח לה עוד חבילות ולא חיברם שמה או שזרקם עוד יותר על הסכך מותר לתלו. So he says, right, that but if you have some extra pieces there, you know, which are not really necessary for the sukkah, those you can take, you can use them. So what's the example? Like, for instance, you know, let's say a person puts, you know, schach, right, which is the top of the sukkah, right? He puts some extra stuff up there, you know, he doesn't really need that stuff. Just, you know, he needed a place to pile it up there. So he put it there. So that stuff he's allowed to take because it's not really crucial for the sukkah. He doesn't need it there. It's just like, you know, right, it's just some, right, overmeasure, overhang, whatever it's called, right? So that's why it's allowed to take from there. So what's the reason, by the way, you're not allowed to take from the sukkah on the holiday, on Yom Tov? So the answer is because, I'm sorry?
It's a building.
Because it's a muktzah, right? So what does that mean? It's designated for the sukkah, which is a mitzvah, you know? So you can't take that and use it for other uses, you know? designated for the mitzvah. So it's a form of muktzah, basically, right? That's what it is, Okay, that's the story. So we'll get into a little bit deeper, right? This whole thing. So he said that's allowed according to everybody. He told me, so he said if you made a condition, right, before Yom Tov, I'm going to use it for some other purpose, right? Menafla, and then it fell off, it's mutar to you, you're allowed to. After tonight, kama, even according to the first opinion, right? Even from the right main part of the schach, right? Not some extra stuff. Aval besukat hachag lo mehane tana. Look what he says, right? But if you're doing it for the holiday, right? So then a condition will not help you. So now that helps us to understand, right, what we're talking about here a little bit better. So as we said, right, the question is when we're talking about the sukkah here, he said you're making the sukkah on atzeret, right? So what is atzeret?
Like a gathering?
Right. So it's true. It literally means a gathering, right? But it's referring to a holiday, right? So when do we call atzeret? It's Shavuot. It's called atzeret, right? The Hag Shavuot. So he's making the sukkah on Shavuot. Right. Let's see the language again there, right? One more time. So right. So you're making it for shade, because you got some strong sun coming down, right, blaring down on you. Right, so you need some shade there, right? So he made it for shade. It's not a mitzvah, it's not Sukkot, it's Shavuot. So therefore, right, says the Tur that when it comes to that kind of a sukkah, which is not really for a mitzvah, so if you make a tanai, right, if you make a condition, you can use it for other purposes. But it says when it comes to the chag, right? What's chag? Chag means Sukkot, right? So for Sukkot, if you made it for the mitzvah of Sukkah on Sukkot, so there, even making a condition will not help you. That's what he's saying, right? Why is that? Because there it's specifically for the mitzvah of Sukkah, which is stronger, it has a stronger level of designation there. Okay, good. So let's go to Bet Yosef, see what he says about this. So he says here, he brings a source, right? Perek Kamevi Kadayain. It's over there in this perek, right? Tanan. We learned over there. Same page as what we said before, which was yesterday, right? Okay. So anyway, right? It says here there in the Tanan. We learned the Mishnah there. So he says, right, as we said, you're not allowed to take wood from the sukkah, to use it for some other purpose. Except, right, what? If there's some extra wood there, which is not necessary for the sukkah, right? Like, it's hanging around there, next to the wall. So that stuff you can take. It's no problem. Right? But Gemara, it says in Gemara there, like, Maishana mina sukkah delo. So it says, right, Gemara, why aren't you allowed to take it from the sukkah itself, right? The kasatar ahala mina samuch, right? Because you're demolishing, right? That's what it is, right? As we said, here there's no mitzvah here, right? It's not Sukkot. It's right. It's Shavuot. So there's no mitzvah in the sukkah in itself, right? So therefore you're demolishing. That's the problem. Mina samuch, right? La nami ka satar. So he says, then, all right, so then if that's the case, then, right, even whatever is next to it should be forbidden, he says, right? So he says, Ahala, Amarav Yuda, Amar Shemuel, my samuch ledefanot, right? So he explains, right, we're talking about some extra stuff, which is next to the wall, so you don't need that stuff. That's the thing, right? It's just, some extra. Okay, good. רב מנשי אמר, אפילו תמה כשאין סמוך לדפנות, כי תניא, so it says, this rabbi, even you can say that, even if it's not next to the walls, right? So what? Tanya היא באסורייתא, right? So right, it says it's talking about asuriata. So we'll see what that means, right? Somebody will explain here what that is. Tanya Rabbi Chia bar Yosef. So it says, right, this rabbi says, Kamed Rabbi Yochanan, in front of Rabbi Yochanan, he teaches, and notlin etzim min sukkah, right? Again, we shouldn't take the wood from the sukkah, ela min samuchla, right? Only something which is next to it, right? Extra. Okay. Rabbi Shimon Matir. So Rabbi Shimon allows this, right? The Shavin b'sukat chag. But he says, when it comes to Sukkot, right? That's already a mitzvah in itself, right? The Sukkah. So there, b'chag, right? B'chag she'asura, that's, everybody admits that that's forbidden. Right? As we said, right there, there's the issue of, right, muktzah there, you know? Right? So, but if you made a condition, it goes according to the condition, right? And it objects over there, but Rabbi Shimon Matir, Rabbi Shimon allows, V'haka satar ala, right? Right, is demolishing. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak b'sukkah nofelet askinan. So he says, this rabbi answers, yeah, we're talking about a sukkah which collapsed, right? It fell down, you know? So in other words, there's no more prohibition of demolishing because it's already demolished as it is. That's something else, right? The Rabbi Shimon, the ta'ameh, the let le mukse, right? So Rabbi Shimon holds, right, according to his general opinion, right, all over the this topic, right, which is that what? That he doesn't hold by mukse so strong when it comes to Yom Tov. The Tanya, as we learned in Braita, mutar hashemen shebener, right? So he says the leftover oil, which is in the candle, should be carried, and also in the bowl, asur, it's forbidden. Right? But Rabbi Shimon Matir, Rabbi Shimon allows this. Uparich midame hatam. So it objects, right? Is that the same thing? Are you comparing, right, apples to apples or apples to oranges, right? Adam hatam adam yoshev mitzapeh matay tichabe nero. So he says over there, that's something else, because a person knows, right, that eventually his candle will go out, right? It will get extinguished. But when it comes to the sukkah, it says, what are people like, you know, sitting and waiting, right, for their sukkah to fall, right, to collapse? So, you know, right, it's not the same thing, he says, right? So meaning what? One is more expected and the other one is not so expected. Not the same thing when it comes to the laws of muktzah. Okay, so that's the story there. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. So it says this rabbi, Hacha besukkah reuah askinan. So he says, yeah, you know what? We're talking about. Okay, so you know, good question, right? In other words, he's right. He admits that he's got a good point here. So therefore, he says, yeah, you're right. So you know what we're talking about here. We're dealing with a sukkah which is dilapidated, right? It didn't fall yet, totally, right? Askinan. So therefore, he says he was thinking that it may fall. You know, he knows, right? It's about to go. You know. Right, so therefore it's not a big surprise for him. So what does that mean? That since it's not a big surprise, he was expecting it, so it's not so muktzah. Right, let's put it this way, right? V'shavin v'sukkah chag shehi asura, right? So he says, but when it comes to, right, the sukkah of Sukkot, that's a different story, right? Forbidden. Right? If he made a condition, it goes according to the condition. So he asks, are you sure that, right, the condition works with this kind of thing? Right? So he says, right, that how do you know? Like this rabbi says, right? How do I know that the wood of the sukkah is forbidden all 7 days of Sukkot? Right? Shneimar, as it says in the verse, Vaikra, Chag HaSukkot Shiva Yamim, right? It says, L'Adonai, 7 days to God, right? So what does that mean? All those 7 days, the sukkah belongs to God. So don't touch it, you know, don't play around with it. It's muktzah. Amar Rav Yosef, Sefa Atan Sukkah de Alma. So he says, in the end, we're talking about a regular sukkah. Aval sukkah the mitzvah, but it says when it comes to a mitzvah sukkah, right? When is it a mitzvah sukkah? On Sukkot. Right? Lo mehaned batana. So then the condition doesn't work, right? That's what the Torah said, right? Exactly. That when it comes to a mitzvah sukkah, so there the condition doesn't work. Why is that? Because it's already set aside for the mitzvah of sukkah. Okay, good. Pirish Rashi and notlin etzim min sukkah. So it says, right, Rashi, that we don't take wood from the sukkah. What is so? He explains that. The Pesach or Be'atzeret. So he says, right, what are we talking about? We're talking about when it's Passover or it's Shavuot, right? Like we said, Shavuot, right? Atzeret means Shavuot. But there's also not something which is similar to that. You know what is similar? Shmini Atzeret, right? Which is, the 8th day of Sukkot, right? After Sukkot. It's called Shmini Atzeret. But when you say Atzeret by itself, it means Shavuot. Usually that's what it means. That's the way it is. So anyway, right, he's Yosef Sukkah, he's dwelling in the Sukkah Begina, right, in the garden, right, Pardes, or in the orchard. So that's what Rashi says. And notadin etzim min sukkah. So we're not allowed to take the wood from the Sukkah, right? Ela min samuchla, only something which is next to it. Hashta mashma imhu av shenatnu kanim arbe mutar litol mehem. Right. So Rashi says, right, something interesting, that implies that if the wall is kind of like thick, and you don't need it to be so thick. So he says, then you can take some away, and take it out, right? Use it. Right? But the Gemara says, but you wait a second, you're demolishing here, right? You're demolishing a tent. So it's because since it's nullified, right, as opposed to regarding the schach, right, so whatever he takes from there, it's called demolishing. Okay, samuch ledefanot, right, it's close to the wall. Kaniman is kafim sevivot ledefanot. So as we said, right, these are like additional pieces of wood which are around the sukkah, right, some extra stuff there. Right, so it says, since they were not really like tied up together with the wall, they're just like hanging there, standing there. They're not really a part of the structure, right? Lo batle, so therefore they don't get really nullified into the structure of the sukkah, right? So it's not the same thing as having like something which is close to the schach. Says because the schach is not really tied down, right? It's not bundled together. So it says therefore when it comes to the schach, it's all the same, right? Whether it's a little bit above, a little bit below, it's all one body. Okay, interesting. So then he goes on to say, even if you tell me that, I can tell you that even it's not close to the walls, it's close to the schach. Right? So now we'll see what this word means, right? We were waiting all this time to see what this word means. Now Rashi is going to tell you, right? So he says, right, what is Isuryata? Asuryata? Chavilot shel kanim, right? These are bundles of reeds. Shinatanan al schach, and he put them on top of the schach, right? To weigh them down a little bit, right? So they shouldn't fly away. So he said, but since he didn't open up the bundle, so it's not really considered to be, right, a part of the schach, It's a bundle. So what is he doing there? He says he's just storing them there, storage, that's the only thing. Okay. So then he goes on, Rashi. Rabbi Shimon allows this, right, even from the schach. If you made a condition on it, right, as we said, before Yom Tov, Nofelet, it fell, Shenafla b'Yom Tov, it fell on Yom Tov, the Sukkah. The Leka Sitira Ochel. So therefore, there's no demolishing here. It's already demolished as it is, right? The Tanakama. So he says the reason of the Tanakama, the first opinion, Mishum de Mukse, right? It's Mukse. The Ha Ben Hashmashot Haitam Mekemet Mukse he mechamat isur sitira, right? So he says it was right at twilight on the incoming of the holiday, right? It was already there, and therefore, right, it became muktzah, because right, mechamat isur sitira, because of the prohibition of demolishing, right? Aval samuchla, but he says whatever is next to it, lav muktzah, that's not muktzah, right? The letbe mishum sitira, because there's no prohibition of demolishing there. Why is there no prohibition of demolishing? Because it's not really tied in there, together, right? It's not bundled up together with the rest of the wall. Okay, good. So then he goes on, right? Rashi brings here the whole Rashi. Lots of good stuff here. The sukkah. So we're talking about a sukkah, which is I'm sorry. Right, so I skipped something. Let me go on the first line, right? Adam Yosef ben Sapeh Yamatzai Tibchaber Imo. So he says the person is expecting his candle to go out. Sheodea shesofa lechabot, right? He knows that the end of this candle is to go out. Yikach ben hashmashot da'ateh ala mutar. So he says, therefore, right, during twilight, he's thinking about using the extra stuff there. Hacha Adam Yosef ben Sapeh, right? But when it comes to a sukkah, a person is not thinking about the extra, right? It's going to fall the sukkah, he's going to use it. So says Rashi, right? What is he, a prophet, right? He knows that the sukkah is going to fall tomorrow. Okay. So he says, right, sukkah re'u'ah. We're talking about a sukkah which is right, dilapidated. The masika date, the nafla, right? So he says that he's thinking that it's going to fall, right? He's expecting that, right? Umachar nafla, and it'll fall tomorrow, right? Yilkach Rabbi Shimon mukse leka. So he says, therefore, according to Rabbi Shimon, there's no mukse here. Because he already was thinking about it from yesterday. Ilabe, right? According to first opinion, lo minan date ilabe b'shum midi. So the lo chazu ben hashmashot. But according to the other opinion, right, we don't say that he's thinking about it, something which has been hashmashot during twilight. With anything like that, we don't say. The katane ve'im hitna alea asukah de alma kae. So he says because the teachers there that if he made a condition, right? That's talking about a regular sukkah, right? Ve'aresha de braita nahadar. So he's going back to the beginning of the braita. The ifligu ba. They had an argument there about this. Tanakama, first Rabbi Shimon, right? And Rabbi Shimon. The katana en of notilin at simina sukkah. So it says there, right? We don't take the wood from the sukkah. So he says we qualified that as talking about a case where the sukkah, right, collapsed. Mishum muktzeh, because it's muktzeh. So he tells you regarding that, right, that if it fell already, I'm sorry, if he already made a condition before Sukkot, right, Sheim Tipol, that if it'll fall, Machar, but tomorrow, Yasikena, right, he will use it, right, for fuel, right, firewood, whatever, right. Hakol Afitanal, so then it goes going to his condition. Ad Kan Noshan Rashi, that's all Rashi, right? Okay, we got the whole Rashi over there. Good. So now we're going to the other Rishonim, right? Katabaran. So says the Ran, so he says, right, as we said in the Talmud, if you made a condition, it goes going to the condition. So it's even according to Rabbi Yehuda, it says that the condition works, the whole muktzah, for all kinds of muktzah, mechamat isur, or for things which are because of prohibition. Once the time of the prohibition passes. So it says from here, right, we understand now the words of Rabbeinu, right? Who's Rabbeinu? We're talking about the Torah, right? That's what she said, right? You make the sukkah on Shavuot. Pashut hu delav lememra she'asa be'atzeret, right? Oh, so he says, right? Obviously, he doesn't really mean literally. they made it on Shavuot, right? You understand why that is?
Because he'd be building.
Right, exactly. You're not gonna make a sukkah on Yom Tov. You know what I mean? You have to make it before Yom Tov. That's the whole point, right? So yeah. Yes, indeed, yes, indeed. By the way, let's say you forgot to make a sukkah before Yom Tov, right? So, do you have any solution for Yom Tov? What do you do?
Go to a neighbor's.
Go to the neighbors. Let's say you don't have any neighbors, right? Whatever. So, what do you do? Right. So, I think if I'm not mistaken, you're allowed to tell a goy to build it for you. Right? I think I saw that one time in a certain book. What's the reason, by the way? You're allowed to tell the goy to do it for you. First of all, it's a mitzvah, right? To have a sukkah, right? So it's a mitzvah matter, number one, right? But also, right, if I'm not mistaken, making a sukkah on Yom Tov is not really prohibition from the Torah. It's only from the rabbis, right? It's not from the Torah. So why is that? Anybody know why? So the answer is because it's only it's only a temporary structure. It's not a permanent structure. So therefore, that's only from the rabbis, Temporary structures are not from the Torah. That's the story. If I'm not mistaken, right? I'll check that again just to make sure, right? So therefore you're allowed to tell the goy to do it on Yom Tov, right? Okay. So getting back to our discussion, right? Right, obviously that's what he's saying, right? We're not talking about that he made the sukkah on Yom Tov itself. Right? He made it before Yom Tov. That's what it means. So he says that Deha asur la'asota b'Yom Tov. You're not allowed to make it on Yom Tov. Second. Where did I jump here? I jumped somewhere. Right, here we are. So yeah, here we are. So right, so as we said, you're not allowed to make it on Yom Tov. Ela aoseh sukkah bechol. So he says, but if you're making a sukkah on a weekday, like Bisman had said, at the time of Shavuot, right? In other words, before, I guess, right? That's what it means, obviously, right? Bisman had said, asur litol mimena etzim. So you're not allowed to take the wood from there. Yom Tov and Yom Tov. V'diek lichtov atzeret. So he says he was precise to write atzeret, right? Which we said is Shavuot. Because that comes to exclude Sukkot, right? Because it's not the same thing, right? As we said, right? Sukkot is more stringent than Shavuot. So it's because since it's a mitzvah there to have a sukkah, time of the mitzvah, so there's no permission, right, to make a condition on that, right? Avakasheli b'atzeret or b'Pesach kevan de lav zman mitzvata hu ki asa'ah l'shem chag may have. So, right, Laran asks a question over here. Interesting, right? So he says, I have a little bit of a problem over here. What's the problem? So it says if he made a sukkah for Shavuot or Pesach. So since it's not the time of the mitzvah of sukkah, he says, right? Ki asa l'shem chag my have. So it says if he made it for the holiday, what do I care? Oh, interesting. Okay, we'll see what that means, right? The im lo asa l'shem mitzvah is also if he didn't do it for the mitzvah, even though we can use it for the holiday, so it says we can say the mehane batana, then the condition will work. The lo chal sham shem shamayim ala, because there's no right, it doesn't have any sanctity over there. Me'achar shelo naseh ba maaseh l'shem mitzvah, because there was no mitzvah batter done there, right? It's a mitzvah preparation. Then can my iria atzeret denakat. So it says therefore, why did he dafka use the language of atzeret, right, which is Shavuot, as we said. So it says also on the Sukkot it will be the same thing. So even though we can push this aside and say the Sava Rabbeinu, the Belo Asiyat Maseh Chal Shem Shemayim Aleh, that even if you don't do anything, right, physically, whatever, right, it still has the sanctity there. Because it's fitting to do the mitzvah there. That's why he wrote afterwards about the Sukkot Achad, that when it comes to Sukkot, like the Sukkah there, lo mehane tanad, like the condition doesn't work here, doesn't work. So he didn't differentiate between making it for the sake of the mitzvah, or he made it for shade. But it's nevertheless that the first claim is a claim. The cheman de lav mitzvatahi. So it's because this is not really a mitzvah, right? Ki asa'ah l'shem chag, my have. So if he made it for Sukkot, right? What difference does it make? L'chach nireh lefaresh de lo katav letzel. So he says, therefore, it seems that we should explain like this, right? When he said, using it for shade, ela le'ashev de lo tikshel sukkah b'atzel dechi mashkachadla. Because if you're going to ask me, right, why do we need a sukkah for Shavuot? So we'll answer you, right? It's for shade, There's no mitzvah there, obviously. So it says then, right, the rains will come and snow and destroy, right, the sukkah, right? Demolish the sukkah. That's why he wrote that he made it for shade. That's why he says, right, he's making a sukkah. He didn't say, right, that we shouldn't take wood from the sukkah, b'yom tov and yom tov. Like the Mishnah says like that. It could be that says that's possible. It's possible that that's the reason why he was he deduced the katab b'atzeret v'lo katab b'pesach. That's why he said Shavuot and not Passover. What difference does it make, right? Even though they're equal when it comes to their halacha. So it says, but the difference is like this, right? Before Passover, it's still not so hot, right? The sun, right? It's not blaring so much. So you don't really need, right, a sukkah for shade before Passover. But when it comes to before, between, right, after Passover, right, going towards Shavuot, then the sun gets stronger already, right? So therefore, right, people already start making like huts, for the sake of shade. Okay, interesting. All right, good. So let's see how much more we got here. Okay, it looks like it's a big one, but we'll try. We'll see what we can do. We'll see what we can do with this thing. All right, so I think we were right here. So it says, right, "Umash katav asur litor mimena etzim b'yom tov." That what you said, right? You're not allowed to take the wood on Yom Tov. Afilu hayta re'ua, even if it was dilapidated, and it actually collapsed. But Rabbi Shimon matir bere'ua nefela. But Rabbi Shimon allows this. Tomar aval im lo hayta re'ua. So it means to say that if it was not dilapidated, right? Modeh Rabbi Shimon, then even Rabbi Shimon would admit that even if it fell, it's still forbidden. The muktzeh mechamakhmat isur, because this is like a prohibition, because you weren't thinking about it. Okay. Because since it was like nice and strong, from yesterday, we weren't expecting that it should fall down. So he's not thinking about that. He's not expecting it. Right, so that resembles the case of like a cup, or a bowl, right, or something like that. It's a tray, right? Things like this. The Rabbi Shimon admits there, right, that they are muktzeh. So it says, so therefore it says, if it didn't collapse, it will be forbidden because you're demolishing, right, a tent. He says also, it's all brought down in the Gemara that I wrote. Okay, good. So it goes on. מה שכתבתי, ואם לאחר שתקנה בדפנותיה, סחה שמח לה עוד חבילות. Right? So it says, if after, okay, we got to read this inside the tour. You got to go into the tour here. Back to the tour. Right, so it says the tour here. ואם לאחר שתקנה בדפנותיה בסככה, שמח לה עוד חבילות. Right, if after he made already the sukkah, right, the walls and everything and the schach, but then he added some more, right, bundles of right stuff there, wood, all kinds of things, right? But he didn't really connect it to the walls of the sukkah. Or let's say he added some extra stuff, right, on top of the schach. He threw some extra bundles there, right? You're allowed to take that. According to everybody. So it says if he made a condition that he's going to take from there in Yom Tov, and then it fell, mutar, you're allowed to. Even according to first opinion. Even from the schach itself, right? But the Sukkot Achad, where it says when it comes to the Sukkot, right? That's a different story, right? Lo mehanet tonight. So there, right, as we said, right, the condition doesn't help there. Okay, good. So let's go to Bet Yosef. Back to Bet Yosef. So it says here in the Bet Yosef, Mashma dehachi kamar. It implies that he says like this, right? Shetikne bedefanotea samach bedefanotea, or achara shetikne beschacha zarak yoter od al aschach. Then lefaresh dafka. Right. So he says that means, as we said, right? He added more stuff to the sukkah after he already finished it, extra material. And as we said, it's not really attached to the sukkah, just standing there. So he says, right, regarding that, אין לפרש דווקא בשתקנה בדפנותיה וסככה, הוא דחי שמח לדפנותיה, יונתן מתול אצלו, אבל אם שמח דפנותיה קודם שייתן לסכך, אסור אצלו. So he says, don't try to understand from this, right, that if he would do it after he finished the sukkah, then it would be allowed, but if he put it there before he finished it, it would not be allowed. The Mishnah, so it says not really true, right? What difference does it make? Right, it says even though there is some reasoning there, to differentiate, so he says, but he says not really enough reasoning there. So he says the language of Rabbeinu, right? The Torah, right? He says it's not really so precise. So he says regarding, right, the issue of the schach and the walls, חבילות הוא כבר מתבאר בלשון גמרא, בלשון רש"י, כתבתי בסמיכה לדופן אפילו אינה חבילות. So he says here, right, okay, maybe we'll, yeah, I guess we can, okay, we'll just do a little bit more here, and we'll stop right at the next junction, we'll stop there. Right, so it's over here, right, one more time. Again, right, he says that the language of the Torah is not precise, right? So what's the problem? Because he wrote, right, that these things, the schach and the walls, were bundles, of stuff, right? But the Rashi already explained, he says, that even if they're not bundled up, it's still the same din, the same halakha. So he says even something extra, which is just like standing there, right? But it's not bundled up together. You're allowed to take them anyway. Why is that? Since they were not interwoven, right, together with the wall, it's like extra stuff there, so it's allowed. Right? So they don't get right. They don't become muktzah. That's what it means there. Right? So it doesn't become part of the wall. But he says, when you're throwing the stuff on top of the schach, even though the Torah didn't explain this, right, explicitly, he says, that's something else, right? They were talking about only bundles, right? Only bundles you're allowed to take. The mutar, but if they're not bundled, right, no, you're not allowed to take them. So again, right, so what are we trying to say, right? Since schach, is not really bundled together anyway, as it is, right? So therefore, right, even if it's so therefore only if it's bundled, right, then you can take it. But if it's not bundled, so it's really a part of the schach. Okay, interesting. Okay, so I guess we'll stop here, right? There's a lot more to discuss over here. We're not going to finish everything today. So we'll see you, right, so tomorrow, as I said, we have to eat after the fast. So either we can, just skip it tomorrow. What's one option, right? Or option number two is we could do the class later, like let's say, I don't know, at 9:30, 10, if you want, we could do it like late. So it's up to you, whatever.
Later, I would say, but I'm not the only one in the class.
Okay, so tomorrow is what? Tomorrow is Tuesday, right? Okay, so you know what? I'll let you guys. We'll keep in touch and we'll see, right? What we're gonna do, because I'll tell you why. I'm not really 100% sure, because sometimes I have a charuta at 10 o'clock. A different guy, right? So what do you call it? So therefore, I may not be able to do it at 10, right? So we'll see. Well, in other words, if he wants to learn tomorrow, like after the fast, I won't be able to do the class. So I'll let you guys know, right? We'll play it by ear.
Okay. Thank you, Kavod Ha.
Okay, God bless. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. B'ezrat Hashem. Chazak Baruch Laila Tov. Have an easy fast, right? It starts tomorrow at dawn, right? So, and it goes 20 minutes after sunset.
Okay, thank you.
All that time, right? It's a fast. Okay, so B'ezrat Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow. B'ezrat Hashem, maybe next day, right? Whatever. So we'll see. Tomorrow, question mark. If
Thank
not,
you.
Wednesday.
Okay. Thank you.
Later, Chazak Baruch.
Later.